So this is the Women in Tabletop Gaming panel. If you're in the wrong panel, please stay. This is the second year that we are doing this panel, and I just want to give a really big shout out to the folks at Saving Throw Show, namely Dom and Megan, who have made this panel possible once again this year, who let me weasel my way onto moderating the panel again. This year, we are talking about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, and I hope that you all will find interesting. So we're going to be talking about something that I don't think too many people really talk about, and that is the business side of this industry that we all really love. We talk about the new games that are coming out and what's really fun and that end, but nobody really talks about what goes into making this industry what it is, and especially the amazing women who make this industry what it is, and our perspective of it. So I want to make sure that you guys are cultivating some questions because our panelists are here to hear from you guys. They want to be able to answer questions for you. So before we get started, I kind of want to get a feel for who is in our audience. Any entrepreneurs here? That's my girl. Awesome. Anybody who does business with customers, consumers, business to business? You deal with pipes and beams and stuff. You're not that. They don't talk back to you. Anybody who does project management? Anybody that's curious about what it takes to run a business? These are my people. Okay, so we are going to start off this panel in the boring way that all panels start, but the very important way, and I'm going to let my fantastic panelists introduce themselves, and I'm going to start down here with Brooke, and we're going to work our ways through. Is it on? Yes, okay, so before the questions come, we do have mics on stage, and as you'll notice, they're not piping through the room. This panel is being recorded, and we will have the video later after Gen Con. So make sure that you're checking out the Saving Throw Show pages, their social media, and the Twist Gaming pages, their social media, to find this video later. Sound good? That's very quiet. Can we try that again? Yes. I'm exhausted. I need the energy, people.
Friday,
I
guys.
need it.
Only Friday. Come on.
Give me one big yes.
Do it.
Yes. There we go. Okay, look, here's the deal. If you guys stay quiet during the panel, I'm going to make you do the wave.
Whoa.
So, all right.
And before doing so, we will turn the camera around.
So we'll know if you're not doing it.
Yeah. Yes. All right, my name is Brooke Nelson, and I'm here with Asmodee North America.
What's that? It's a little company.
It is a
Tiny company.
Are you a startup? Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, it's super teeny. I just started it myself, actually, a few months ago. No, but yeah, so we do, how do I describe it? It's basically like I'm not going to say the boring stuff because it's not boring to everybody, but the accounting and the payroll and the marketing for other studios so that they can concentrate on what they do best, which is making fantastic games.
And I'm Amanda Hamon-Kunz. I am the managing developer for the Starfinder role-playing game at Paizo Incorporated. And if you go into the big exhibit hall and you squint really hard, you might see the little purple and black booth that's in the corner. That's us.
Hi, I'm Jodi Black. I'm with Pinnacle Entertainment Group. We make a tabletop role-playing game. It's known as Savage Worlds. You might have heard of another game of ours called Deadlands. They play it on Saving Throw Show. If you're a Wild Cards fan, thank you. Thank you. Yes, we have had such a great response from that show. We're thrilled that Saving Throw and the crew there have done such a great job with that in representing our product, and everybody has such a good time with it. And it just really shows just how much fun you can have with it at home. And that's what I'm here to say is what I do for Pinnacle is I do the boring stuff like she was talking about of making sure that the books get made. I'm the final editor on everything, and I do all the marketing and all the Kickstarters and all the fulfillment and all that boring stuff. So I'm not a writer, I'm just an editor, sorry. I also have another company because I have 2 children that are going to college. So 3 years ago, my husband and I started Carolina Game Tables. And we make the table that wild cards play on, call it a streamer game table. We also offer game tables for real life. So it's one table you can use as a dining room table and as a game table. So I hope you'll check out that booth. That's where I am all weekend because Studio 2 Publishing handles our fulfillment for Pinnacle, and they are doing a great job. I don't have to bother them. I just give them a sign every now and then and make sure social media is happening. It's like they do a great job. So I think that's everything that I'm doing for the two
At the
companies.
moment.
Yes.
For today.
And I'm so thrilled to be sitting here because I'm sitting, and also because I get to talk to all of you and share in your experiences here at Gen Con. And it's just always so much fun to meet new people and hear their stories about gaming. And this is what brings you to Gen Con. It's also what brings you into our industry. So welcome.
Start there? Yeah. So the Carolina Game Tables has an ad. We were talking about it a little bit before, and it's supposed to be up on the big Jumbotron. If you see that ad, I want to see you guys take selfies with the ad and post them on social media because Jodi hasn't seen the ad on the Jumbotron yet.
Hi, I'm Meghan Caves, and I am a producer and actor for Saving Throw. And I kind of do a lot of different things. I help run the social media page for Saving Throw. A lot of the production stuff that we do is having meetings and discussing shows and figuring things out. But that is where I spend a lot of my time. And there's some time, obviously, I'm dressed for wild cards, as we were talking about, as we have a live show right after this. But a lot of the time that I spend with Saving Throw is behind the scenes at home, scheduling things, trying to figure different things out. I make all the GIFs for the most part for the channel, so it keeps me busy, for sure.
Hi, I'm Kira Peavely. I'm the CEO of Colossal, which includes Maple Games and Colossal Games Studios. I do a lot of the business side, boring stuff, as well as supporting the Kickstarter and the marketing for the company. And that's pretty much it. There's a lot that goes into, I mean, you guys know the boring stuff is really what keeps you really, really busy. So that's me.
Hi, I'm Julie. I'm with Greenbrier Games. I'm the VP and COO of the company. I am not going to call it boring stuff. I'm going to call it the world's most complex Euro game.
Yes. That is a really good.
That's what I do. And I'm in it to win. So I do some of the marketing and sales. I primarily don't let's say reinforcements when it comes to the manufacturing, so I know what we do, but I tend to be the last person to talk to. That's more my partners in the company. Once it's been made, the physical components have been made, it then is handed to me, and I'm doing a lot of the what does it take to get to your hands. So the sales, the marketing, the talking to retailers, the looking at the market and what we are going to create. So that also means that I'm the person that talks to the designers, and I do development, and I do contract negotiations. So that's primarily what I do for our company.
Thank you. Can I get a big round of applause for all my panelists? So I hope you guys now kind of have a sense of the magnitude of awesome people that we have here on the panel and the really big companies that they are steering. It's just a really great opportunity to get that kind of information from people who know this business inside and out. If you have a question at any point in time, I'm going to tell you something I tell my kids, there's no dumb questions. Make sure you ask any question that you can think of. If you leave this room, you're going to regret not asking those questions. And it's important for the flow. So please, seriously, questions are great. That's how you make the conversation go. It's how I get the information that you guys want out there. Raise your hand any point in time. I will see you. I will call you. Be good. The tabletop industry, including, RPGs and board games, is super unique. I was at Origins this year, and we went to dinner with Avery, Avi. Jeez Louise, that was bad. And now it's recorded.
Avenel?
Yeah, thank you. And one of the stats she threw out was super interesting to me. And I want to say she said it's a $1.5 billion industry in total.
That sounds right.
That sounds right. $1.5 billion, this industry. And I was kind of blown away because it's such a small, close, tight-knit industry. So I have to ask you guys, and I'll start with this end of the table, how did you decide board gaming is where I want to be? Like how you go through school, you guys are all formally college educated. So you go through your traditional path, and how do you decide that I'm going to take this skill set and move into board games? Brooke, we'll start with you.
I've always wanted to make a lot of money, so I went to school for theater.
No way.
And then I got my master's in theater. And then I needed health insurance. So I got a real job with IKEA, actually, and I was there for 12 years. I learned a lot of stuff. I learned about supply, I learned about sales, I learned about IKEA pronunciations, Swedish names. And I took all that information, and I found out I'm a social media manager at Asmodee North America. I forgot to mention that. I don't run the company, surprise. But I fell in love with the power of social media and how it gives us all the opportunity to speak directly to the customer. It's not like more traditional marketing where you spend days and hours and weeks and months and craft this perfect message with this perfect imagery, and you send it out there. And then you wait. And the thing that I love the most about social media is that, well, plus and minus, you get immediate feedback. Mm-hmm. And so I started to feel very strongly that this was a really great tool for business, for getting that feedback immediately, for making things better, for surprising and delighting your customers and your potential customers. So when I was looking for my next opportunity, I wanted something that I felt passionate about. Not that furniture isn't great. But I did not, at 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 years old, think that I'd be selling furniture. I also didn't think I'd be selling board games, but it's way more fun. But yeah, so it was a great opportunity for me to be able to transfer those kinds of ideas and the passion I had for connecting with the customer to also bring people together. That's the other thing that's so great about tabletop gaming is that you're with people. You're with your people. You're telling stories. You're eating food. You're getting angry. You're flipping the table, and you're not invited back until like a suitable amount of time. But that's kind of that's where the journey brought me, is that I was able to learn all of these things and then bring it back to an area that I'm passionate about and that I love to talk about.
Amanda, you kind of you got into the industry and then you really worked your way up to the top. Can you expand on that part too? I mean, I think that's fantastic.
Sure. So, do you want me to start at the beginning? Or do you want me to start about what I'm doing right now?
I mean, you do you, boo.
Okay. So I also wanted to make a lot of money. And so I got a journalism degree and I became a journalist. And it turns out you don't make any money as a journalist. And your hours are really grueling. And there's a lot of stress. And you're getting it from all sides. And nobody's ever happy with anything that you're doing. It's a great career for some folks. I was very unhappy in the career. And so I decided that if I was going to be going through this kind of professional environment, I wanted to do something that I really liked. And I understood that, especially on the creative side, jobs are very, very few and far between in role-playing games. But that was what I really loved, and so I thought I could apply my skills to that. I had a journalism degree. I was a professional editor. I had a lot of just understanding of the way information flowed and the way people absorbed information and learned things. And so I decided that I would try to pursue opportunities for freelance editing in games. This was several years back. I had been going to Gen Con for years as a fan, back when it was still in Indianapolis, but in the first year, so it was smaller. It was all in the old exhibit hall. And so I approached companies and got a few cards and ended up making contact with somebody at Paizo, the former editor-in-chief, Wes Schneider, who said at the time, we don't actually use freelance editors, but how do you feel about game design? And I thought, just my reporter brain snapped and said, sure, I'll try that. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I don't know how to do this. I'm going to fail. It's going to be terrible. He's never going to email me anyway. It's going to be fine. But then he actually did reach out, and I did get some opportunities, and I was able to do some freelance work for Paizo and meet other smaller publishers through that and get a lot of work and a lot of experience under my belt. And when a position at Paizo for an assistant developer, somebody kind of working at the very ground level of the creative staff on Pathfinder, came open, I applied for it, but only because I felt like if I didn't, a lot of my friends in the industry would ask me if I applied, and if I said no, they'd get really mad. So I wanted to be able to say, yes, I applied and I didn't get the job, but I applied and I actually got the job through a blind testing process that was actually created to try to get rid of people's internal bias that happens, when women and minorities apply for jobs. And so I really benefited from that, from being able to have my, my skills and my experience come to the forefront through that process. And I walked in the door with like 2 hardcovers as the lead editor and project manager and developer under my belt. So I actually had a lot of experience, but in my head, I felt like that I really wasn't very qualified. I think maybe you guys have had that experience.
I want to touch on that, and I don't mean to cut you, but I wanted to ask you ladies, you hit 2 very important points that I think are super important to talk about. One, you did the footwork. Have you ladies in this industry on this side of the table ever had that moment maybe in the beginning where you've got to go and do the footwork? You kind of don't have a name yet, and you're going out to people you don't know, and you're handing out business cards or introducing yourself. How did you guys, maybe you have an experience or that you can talk about with that?
Sure. Okay. Great. For me, it was I started doing board games through education. So I have a master's in education. I was a teacher, and I was already established as doing educational games, going to state conventions, how to incorporate RPG elements and LARP elements into teaching history, into teaching science. That was my dissertation for my master's. So I was pretty established that way. So when I came into it as a commercial thing, I felt pretty confident about myself. But it's a very different thing. You're new, and nobody knew who I was. That first year was really rough because I did feel very confident about myself, and I was getting a lot of, who are you? Do you even know games type of thing? And that's fine because they didn't know me. What I learned very quickly as a self-survival skill was I like playing games with my friends. So if everybody is my friend, it's very easy to talk to. So I made everybody my friend, whether they wanted to be my friend or not. Sometimes they probably still don't, but nonetheless, they're my friends. So to the point, I've been, last year at Essen, I just fell into a conversation with Paul Grogan because I had seen his reviews, and I think they're pretty nifty, and I just started talking to him, and he's super polite, and so we're on the train, we're headed to the convention center. He did not know me from a hole in the wall, but because I was so, not like, oh, I'm so excited to meet you. I was just, oh my goodness, it's so early. I just can't, the time changes. And he's so polite, he couldn't be like, it was a good 15 minutes before he was like, have we met before? And I was like, well, we have now. So what are you doing for lunch? We hanging out? And that has been my approach to it. So it was a very different, but because I was older and felt very confident in at least my ability in teaching games and developing games as an educator. So it was a very different thing. And yes, but there have been plenty of times where the first time around I got a lot of, I'm sorry, who are you? And then the second time I get have we met? And the third time they're like, oh yeah. And I just don't, they're my friend. They just don't know it yet. So that's how I handled it.
Amanda, you hit another important point, and I think, Julie, you kind of echoed that point, that feeling sometimes we have of not being good enough. There's a better term for it that's slipping. That's what I'm looking for.
Yep.
Jodi, can you tell me about what it feels like? So, tell me about that.
Okay, so imposter syndrome, if you don't know the term, it's basically you're the person who's standing in the room going, all these other people are so cool and I'm not. So that's happened to everybody who's ever been a gamer, right? So that's not anything new. And I think once you can get past that, and realize that you are just as capable, just as cool as everybody else in the room, or even better yet, they're just as nerdy as you are, then you can get over it. But that is a hurdle. You know, you do have to kind of take stock of yourself. Like, okay, I'm not the skinniest person, or I'm not the youngest person, or I'm not, you know, whatever your qualifier is, just get rid of it. And the way that I got over that, and it's not going to work for everybody, is I had a background in nonprofits. So running a nonprofit is a lot like running a game company, unfortunately. But so when you get comfortable asking people for money, like you do with a nonprofit, then there are no barriers there. And the way that I consulted people as a nonprofit consultant was learn to ask people for the salt and pepper. All they can say is no. And that is the worst thing that they can say to you. And it's just a word. And you go to somebody else and you ask them for the salt and pepper. It's the same thing for the money, and it's the same thing for the job in the game industry. That's how I got over it. That was what worked for me.
Has anybody in the audience had that similar experience where you've had to raise money for something or ask people for money for something? Have any of you had maybe something that's worked really well?
Crickets.
Crickets. Yeah.
So we have a show, Heavy Cardboard, and we have a Patreon, and that's how I make my living. So I do it by asking people to support me for a living. So basically, buck up and do it. Seriously, I didn't start the show with the intention of doing it full time, but eventually I saw, hey, maybe there was a path, and you just gotta. You know what you do is worth supporting, and just grin and bear it and be like, hey, here I am, do you want to support this?
What was your...
I actually work for a medical nonprofit currently, and it's for a medical nonprofit that I have the disability that we're raising awareness for. So it's showing your connection and showing that passion, whether it be about gaming, whether it be about a cause. When people see how passionate you are about it, they want to be passionate about it too. And that's one of the great feelings that you get. It's sort of a rush that you get when people are, even if they don't donate or if they don't buy, they're still showing how much they care about what you're trying to show them.
I think that's perfect. I think that's a great point.
Building connection.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've done nonprofit, and I also, my YouTube channel, we just launched Patreon this last year. And for me, it was a lot of getting over I'm not asking people for money, I'm giving them the opportunity to help me. Like, I'm making these videos, I'm putting this out, that's something that somebody else is enjoying, and it's a way of giving back. And so, like, for me, that was how I got over that, and that kind of hurdle where I was like, well, I'm not expecting people to give me money, but I'm giving them the opportunity if they want to.
Very cool. I think those are some pretty good approaches. So we were talking, and before I caveated all of that, we were talking about how you progressed with Paizo, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit. Maybe if you've ever had to ask for a raise, ask for a promotion, kind of fight for your position in a company, and what that challenge is like. And ladies, you know, feel free to chime in, ask questions. This is open discussion, really.
Sure. So one of the things about working at a game company is that a lot of folks who work at some of the larger game companies and even some of the smaller ones have been doing it for many, many years. And they're sort of what we call old school folks. And we have a lot of those types of folks at Paizo. There's a lot of those folks at all of the large companies. And so most of their professional experience has been with that company. But when you have newer folks who are coming into the company, they don't necessarily have a good sense of what your professional experience was before that. They don't really think about, or maybe if they do, they don't really absorb like what exactly your experience has been. And so there was a situation about a year ago, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, in which there became a vacancy in an upper management position. And it was a high-level sort of like an editor-in-chief type of position, actually. And so there was a lot of talk about what the restructuring might look like. The company had changed and grown, and we knew that there were changes that needed to happen, and the executives were looking at, okay, how should we actually have the management structure work at this top level to be a little bit more forward-thinking for what the company's planning in the future. And so there was talk about, splitting the position and, promoting somebody internally. They knew that they needed a senior creative in that position. And so there were talks that were happening with the executives about, they wanted to talk to all the employees who reported to that position, who interacted with that position, about what people in the company thought should be done. And so, I actually ran a newspaper starting when I was 19 years old. It was a tri-weekly newspaper, and I had about a dozen people directly reporting to me. I was responsible indirectly for about 100 total people, including writers and photographers and editors and layout folks. So I knew how to run a very large publishing operation. I also had run a smaller sort of intern program in which I had a lot of student writers reporting to me when I was working in other communications positions. And so I had a lot of experience with mentoring writers. I had a lot of experience getting publishing to work and understanding, how you need to get people to work together to get projects done and get deadlines met. But that was all before I came to the company. And so there was a number of times in which I was saying, if this position is being split into a management supervisory type of position, I'd really like to be considered. I have this experience. Look at my resume that I turned in when I applied, a few years ago. I have done this before, and it wasn't gaming, but it's very similar. It's periodical, it's deadlines, and it took a lot of just sort of like discussion to kind of get that to sink in, because I think that the thinking was, okay, we really need somebody who has been here for a really long time at the company. We really want somebody who, might be kind of next in line from a seniority perspective. But then all of those discussions happened, and all of the folks that reported to the position were like, no, Amanda really knows what she's doing. Like, she really understands deadlines. Like, there's been so many times where she's helped pull us out of the fire, and we've hit a deadline, and we've had the big thing for Gen Con, and we've had, the stuff up on the website when it needs to. And so it took a lot of fighting, and I feel like that I don't know exactly necessarily what would have happened had I not kind of gone up there and just kind of gently been like, hey, I can do this. Hey, look at my resume. Hey, talk to these people. And so it was definitely like a process, but I ended up getting like a coordinator position out of that, and then shortly thereafter was promoted to having the Starfinder team reporting to me once it became like clear that was a thing, that was actually appropriate. So
very cool. Well, congratulations. Jodi, you have a wealth of experience in this industry. Wealth. And you kind of, with both of your companies, you kind of have two perspectives, because you have the entrepreneurial side with Carolina Game Tables, and then you kind of joined with Pinnacle Entertainment Group. So can you talk to me a little? I'm curious about your take on the trend, like an overall trend in the industry, and how you see the different perspective of being an entrepreneur and kind of coming in with Pinnacle and already an established company.
Okay, so Pinnacle's been around for a long time, 20 years. It's when we, more than 20 years now, I guess 21, because 20 years ago is when we published Deadlands for the first time, and when I started playing it. And then because, like you were talking about, it's that conversation. It's never you walk into the boss's office and you put your fist down, you say, you're giving me a raise or I'm leaving. It's you have the conversations, and you kind of, exactly. It's a conversation because these are your coworkers. They're also your friends. You game together. You can learn a lot about somebody when you game with them. But this is how it grows and how you kind of wiggle your way up. And if you have that drive and ambition, and if you don't, then usually you can stay right where you are. That's fine too. But as far as like the overall trend and how it's grown, gosh, it's great to see so many young people I feel like the old grandma in the room, and it's just the white hair. Don't worry about it. But I mean, like, it's so invigorating to us to see so many people playing these games. And I mean, it's not just my kids and the kids of my friends who have been playing. It's, you know, new people who are coming into the industry for the first time who don't have any experience with gaming, and they just think it's a cool thing, and they're getting into it. And we're like, yeah, you like what we do? Really? That's great, you know? It's very validating. It really is, and exciting for us. But it's also a challenge, because how do we reach out to those people? And like you're talking about from the old school thing, we are kind of actively looking for people who understand social media a heck of a lot better than Jodi does, you know,
That's Brooke.
to step in and help us navigate these potential minefields, because they can become contentious. And like, I check Twitter and I'll reply like once every 3 days, okay? I am not good at Twitter, but I'm there. So, you know, it's like, okay, it's a thing, and we recognize it's a thing, and we need to grow that way, but we're not there yet. And we know that we need to get there. And lots of companies are doing a much better job of it than we are. So, you know, so that I think is the overall trend, is that it's growing really fast. And it's not just for the old school grognards anymore. That it's not just in your parents' basements anymore, that you can have like gaming cafes, you know, it's like, what world are we living in? This is fantastic. You know, it's really a dream come true. And we're kind of wrestling with okay, how much longer can we expect this to last? And hopefully it's forever. Does that answer the question? Did I leave anything else?
Yes.
I'm sure I went.
No.
Okay.
We are good. Is anybody? I'm curious with our audience, what kind of things you guys are facing, and do I have somebody out there who's trying to grow their business? Do I have somebody who's looking for advice on getting a raise? Yes.
So I have kind of a different question. I
Yeah.
work in an industry that is very female dominated, and I work in a location where every other person I work with is female. And even working there, there's kind of this weird dynamic when we're working with other companies and other businesses that are male dominated about making like space for females in like male dominated areas, and how you do that, and how you go about making like space for yourself to say things when you're like sitting on a table with all males and they're all saying things and you want to be heard.
So are you asking?
You speak up.
How, are you asking?
You make
for
yourself heard. That's
like
what needs to happen.
Like an ally position? Or are you asking how do we make those positions for ourselves in those situations?
A combination of both.
Cool. Do you want to, Kira?
Go ahead.
No, look.
So,
this is
yeah,
the speaking
so-
up lady.
Yeah, so my history is a little different than everybody here. I kind of got brought into the gaming industry in an interesting way. So I actually went to college for video gaming in a time where it was not a good time to get into the video game industry. So when I got done, I happened to work at an Applebee's, and I had met their marketing person, and they had an opening in Ohio, and I live here in Indiana, and I went to Ohio to work for Applebee's, and I found myself in marketing from a very tech-oriented, what I always call large-scale media project management, because suddenly I wasn't going to be able to do video games, and I needed to market myself a little differently. From there, I went to work for a company called Chacha. There was a search engine, text message service. A lot of people here are nodding their heads. You probably used it when you were in high school. And a little startup, and the guy that ran that was the guy who invented voicemail, very cool little startup. Went from there to work for an agency called Radius here in Indianapolis, and my life went into working mostly with reputation management for Walmart, Equifax, doing a lot of their digital, the Children's Museum here in Indianapolis, and a bunch of other clients like that. And through that, I met a guy named Brian Wyrick, who has a comic book company and had helped start Action Phase Games. Anybody here know who Action Phase Games is? All right. They were absorbed by a company called Indie Boards and Cards. Yeah. The Resistance,
do you know who that
Koo,
is?
Trisha over here, who's amazing. And they needed help with their first Kickstarter, Heroes Wanted. And he comes up to me and he says, my friends are doing a comic book board game. I think you'd like it. Can you help them with their marketing for Kickstarter? I said, sure. In my spare time, why not? In between traveling to Arkansas and all that. and it was a lot of fun. And that's how I met Travis, Chance, and the rest of the crew at Action Phase. And I did contract work with them for a while, and just kind of, I was in an industry that was incredibly male-dominated, just like most industries. I got passed over many times for positions that I was very qualified for, and it was kind of a bummer. But I loved my company, so I stuck around. And then one day, the opportunity fell at my feet with Travis had moved on from Indie Boards and Cards and started Colossal Games, and they needed some help. And an opportunity was put in front of me that I honestly had started to think I'd never see, and that was Chief Operating Officer. And so I took it, and then that kind of grew into what I am doing now as CEO, kind of overseeing all this other stuff for the overall corporation. But and I had made myself very outspoken and very loud, and helped start new service lines for the agency that I worked for, only to find that they would rather have you keep doing what you're doing because you do it well than move you into a position where you can start training other people to do it well and really help the business grow. And it was really frustrating, and so it was really nice for somebody to take a chance on me and let me show what I can do. And I feel like I've kind of rolled with that pretty well so far with Colossal. We're growing. We've added Maple Games. Jess over here was part of Maple, Daryl Andrews and everyone. And so, making yourself heard, I can't stress it enough. It's very important.
So there are a lot of ways to do that. There are. And again, the whole going into the boss's office and slamming your fist down is very cathartic, but not productive. Right. For me, it's talking about, again, the less dramatic, less maybe temporarily satisfying, but long-term beneficial, is thinking about it in project management terms, which if you work on games, you are doing project management in some way, shape, or form, whether it's your own self-project management because you're holding yourself accountable, or if you're doing it in a bigger business. So for me, it's talking about risk management. Risk management is not exciting per se. I mean, the alternative of when something happens, when it doesn't work out, is exciting. But talking about it in terms of, I'm giving you this information. If you are not choosing to listen to it, here is the probability of what might happen. I will give it to you in numbers. I can give it to you in spreadsheets. I love spreadsheets. I don't think they're boring at all. And I will talk about them forever if you would like me to, or if you'd like me to stop, let me just paint you the scenario of a worst case scenario versus a best case outcome if you listen to my risk management. And yes, there were several times early on where I got a lot of, no, we're gonna be fine. No, we don't have to worry about it. It took 2 major cataclysms of more exciting phenomenon in our company for any sort of non-consideration of what I had to say or what I wanted done in the company to fall away. So 2 things happened where it was me against everybody else in the company, who are all male. And at this point now, if I say, I'm not sure about that, I think I might handle it differently, everybody shuts up and listens. But it's not about me being winning or it's about the fact that I have shown through very mundane and talking about it in a very pragmatic ways that having a place for everybody to be, and not just me, but everybody in the company having a place to listen. So our newest person in the company is Walter. He's been there 2 years. So, 2 years is still not, he's not like, we just picked him up, but still. He has a say. We all listen to what he has to say. Everybody has a say in the company. Having a place for everybody to be able to feel comfortable to talk is important. And it also shows that we all, as a collective, do much better. And that's not I don't know. It's not exciting. It's not sexy, but it's definitely something that in the long run is more beneficial for us as a team.
Well, and to the point, data, at the end of the day, anybody that knows me knows that I'm really focused on data. Tricia knows this because we talk about Google Analytics a lot and social media analytics and what really drives those things. And so, you know, I always bring data to the table. Business is not about what you feel necessarily. Your gut should guide you, but you should always look for
games, because games are about creating that kind of emotional ties with each other, winning, losing. So you have all of that. But when you're talking about it as a business, you kind of have to put that to the side and not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you bring the data and you say, hey, this is a data-driven decision. Here's what the data is showing me. Here's why, you know, I feel that this is the right now here's why I feel this way, because the data is pointing me in this direction. Or maybe we want to try something different because we're seeing this is the same thing and we're seeing these people not grow, or whatever the case might be. But getting the data, bringing the data to the table, it helps you make sure that your voice is heard. And really, to your point in the back, I'm sorry, just to bring it back around to you, is that to make space, to make your space, whoever you are, female, male, whoever, everybody needs to make their space. And that's really what it comes down to. And in order to do that, you have to bring what you're best at to the table and show that, and do that by showing, here is the data that I have to show you what I know is right to do in this situation.
Megan, I'm really curious about your perspective on this, because a lot of us here at the table, we have a bit of a different view, because and I think I'm speaking specifically about being live on air with the cameras in front of you. And I know you work with some amazing guys, but I know being on camera with guys, sometimes you have to do things a little differently to make sure that your voice is heard in that moment. Can you talk to me a little bit about when you don't have the opportunity to collect the data, when you can't hide your reactions, when you kind of what is that like? And I think that's good for, like, when you're talking about inter-industry meetings and those kinds of things. What do you do in the moment?
Well, I really like that question. So I will say, just touching on a few different things, yeah, I do feel a little bit different here, because I also have the BFA in drama, and am an actor, and do come from that. And actually, I feel like I kind of lucked. I mean, Saving Throw, I was in a really bad place before I started Saving Throw. I was low. My career was nothing as far as I was concerned. And I lucked into a friend of mine going, hey, you want to come be on this show? And I was like, whoa, okay, I like role-playing games, but what? What is this? And of course, if any of you don't know, Saving Throws, we stream RPGs live. And so I started playing in this game, and I was like, wow, I really like this. I really want to help this company work. And I didn't think I had any skills whatsoever to help beyond being a performer. And I was disappointed in that. And I thought, well, what can I possibly do? But I feel like I got lucky, because Dom and all the people there at Saving Throw really allowed me, and not just me, but me, to come in and say, hey, how can I help? What can I do? And in a lot of ways, I found that there was persistence, because I definitely have the imposter syndrome. I have it at this table. I have it all the time. I actually just was talking about this the other day, but I really do, even still now. But I feel like I've had the opportunity with a great bunch to be able to go, I think this, or here are my thoughts, or here's my opinion. And that's actually something for myself. Just the nature of men in companies not listening to women is also a struggle for women, because for me, I've grown up believing that what I have to say is not as important. And that is one thing that I have really been struggling with, that Saving Throw for me has really helped with. And I'm actually the only female producer as well, so it's all male producers, they're all in here, so they get to hear it. But it's interesting. One of the big things to me, and like you said, I think it is important that you go, here's what I do best, I'm gonna present it. But one thing that I do best, as both a performer and as a person, is my emotional, intuitive interactions. Everything I feel, and I have a lot of judgment on that, because that is such a feminine thing. And I grew up in the Midwest in Oklahoma with a family who did not value that, and people around me who did not value that, and in turn, I did not value that, and I thought, I gotta shut off my emotions, or else no one will ever take me seriously.
Can I counter that just a moment?
Sure.
Because I think that tends to be a little bit of a stereotype with women and their emotions and decision making. And I can tell you, not only in this industry, but coming from a blue collar industry background, I I disagree with that, because I feel like men tend to make a lot of emotional decisions on hubris and anger in business. So I feel like when you talk about emotions, I think that it's a very broad statement when it comes to women, because it becomes, oh, women are sad or cry or whatever.
I don't agree
I
with.
think that we all in general make decisions based on emotions in business, and I think it's just different kinds of emotions that lead them.
I agree with you. I don't think that women do that. I think that's what that's the culture of it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying is the stereotype, and I feel like it's very easy to buy into that, because I agree with you. I think we all base everything on emotion, but I don't think, generally speaking, we see those kinds of things as emotion. We're looking at, oh, you're being whatever the negative emotions that we ascribe generally to women or femininity. But to me, one of the big things about that is, and one thing I really struggle with, but I'm trying to be better about, is not hiding that. When I think I am presenting, I'm always presenting an emotion. When I'm presenting one that would be traditionally feminine, especially when I'm either on the show or talking with the producers, I struggle with that, because I'm like, oh God, they're not going to take me seriously if I do this. And these guys are pretty good about that, but we're all from the same, place. We all grew up, we're all similar in age, so we're all struggling with some of those same things, and I struggle with it. And it's just, to me, the biggest thing that I really want to help drive and change in general is that the acceptance of what is traditionally femininity. That's kind of a big deal to me, because I don't think we should have those delineations anyway. I think men are just as much hurt by not being able to express that, and vice versa. And that is such a big deal. And then on camera, I will also say, this particular group for Wildcards, we've spent a lot of time talking about how to make sure that we're not stepping on each other's toes, et cetera. And that's a general thing, not necessarily a difference between men and women in this particular instance, but it is a really good group for that. But I've also found, similarly, that I have to go, here's my voice, I'm gonna take my time, and I'm gonna put myself out there. And I will also say, and maybe you who asked the question back there have experienced this, sometimes people don't give you that space. And sometimes you just have to kind of put yourself out there and get ignored and kind of maybe get hurt by that and go, okay, but I'm gonna keep trying. Because that's the big thing, is we can talk about, yeah, I'm gonna be persistent and I'm gonna slam my hand down and all that stuff, but sometimes they don't care if you do that. And that's hard. That is really hard, and there's not really a big answer to that, except that we all have to keep trying and keep changing that and keep going, no, this is the new standard. This is what is acceptable now, and we're not going anywhere, even if you never listen to me. It's kind of the big deal there. And yeah, as far as, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah,
but it is interesting, and I will add, before I did all of this, I did very much, I would go into game stores and things like that, and I played role-playing games. I was probably more casual before I got into it, because really what I like is the performance. But I definitely got the litmus test. I definitely would get people like, oh, why are you here? I'm like, well, I'm here to paint all the miniatures that I've been painting for 10 years or whatever, but they don't, I've experienced that a lot, and that is really hard. And sometimes as a performer, I experience that. You experience that on the audience side of things, which is interesting, especially when you're the only female with a bunch of males. So it can be, it's just a lot of persistence and kind of putting up with things and trying to not shut yourself down in the process.
I'd like to add on to what you're saying. So one of the things that I find really frustrating as a female, I guess, is that, to your point about and why you countered, is that males are clearly very emotional, and you'll see this in a lot of businesses where people make the joke about, if a female can say, I need this by Monday, and she's a witch. I'll say witch, okay? But a man can say it, and you're just being told what to do. And so you actually get coached to say, is it possible to get this by Monday?
Yeah.
Why does it need to be different? And it is absolutely, and I've gone through a lot of different trainings and things, and I've learned that it's really more about working with different personalities, and the fact is that if you need it by Monday, you need it by Monday. I'm not a big smiler. I'm doing my best to do a little more since we're in here so nobody sits there and thinks I'm angry. But see, that's kind of the thing, right? Like, I'm not angry, this is just my face. And so it's funny, the weird things that we run into, and it is unfortunate actually for men that are maybe would be considered more on the female side, I'm more on what people would probably say the male side of emotional. If you were going to which is just so ridiculous. Can we all just agree that it's ridiculous? That there are males that are more maybe a little more sensitive, that don't feel comfortable being that way, and vice versa. Like I'm a little more worried about being me.
Who are more nurturing.
More nurturing,
Who are good
yes.
at being empathetic.
Yes.
Who are, and then there are some females who happen
Yeah.
to be.
Like me.
So I got the 5-minute wrap up. So back to the big question. If you have a question, please do not leave here regretting not asking the question. So I'm going to give you guys one last chance. You can ask us what our favorite food is. Yes.
So I noticed that a lot of you didn't have like a business background before. Like I went to school. I also wanted to make a lot of money, so I went to school for woodland performance. Frame that on a resume, like if you want to go into games, how do you frame your experience on a resume to make it sound like you're going to be more business?
Team-oriented.
Can you ladies give me 30 seconds? I want to go down the row of how you would put that on a resume. So that you, what's a resume?
So the great thing about going to school, getting a formal education, getting that degree is that those are marketable, transferable skills. Yes, you stayed up until 3 a.m. and you have a paper due at 7. But you churned it out and you got it done. So you just need to reframe the skills that they taught you, yes, are for this degree, but they probably also made you take math and learn about rocks and things like that. And it's about, it's about people skills. Theater especially, it's about empathy, very important in social media or our customer service or any of those things. And it's just about building relationships because that's what business is.
Amanda?
So my perspective is a little more from the creative side, which is all about understanding who you are and what you're interested and passionate about and how your life experiences and your education feeds into what you want to do and the companies that you're interested in writing for or working for, and really just letting that sort of out and letting your personality kind of shine through your work and not being afraid of doing the things that you really want to do in your writing as you can with your assignments, of course, within reason. But honestly, exactly what Brooke just said, think about what you're good at when you're on your resume. Think about what the company actually wants and what the position is that you're applying for or the position that you would like to talk to the person about possibly applying for. And, put that front and center. And maybe that's not your major. Maybe your minor was in rocks and maybe it's the perfect experience for this game company. Maybe the game company is all about cutting certain types of rocks. Who knows? But putting that front and center and making it seem that is really what you're very good at, and that's really what you're emphasizing is going to be more of interest to them as opposed to trying to just straight up go with, okay, this was my major and this is what I did in college and all of that. So tailoring your resume, I think, is my best advice.
And do your research for the company.
Research the company and research yourself is what I would offer. So take the Myers-Briggs, take the strengthfinder.com. It's a Gallup poll thing. You will learn what your top 5 strengths are, and you can copy-paste the phrases about yourself and put them in that resume. It's easier than thinking about yourself. It's letting other people tell you about yourself. You can even meet with a career counselor at your college. At whatever college you went to, even if you graduated 20 years ago, they will still meet with you. I know this from experience. So that's what I recommend. And also, some of the buzzwords are detail-oriented, you meet deadlines, that you're a team player. Those are the things that we're looking for, just in a general rule.
Well, I will say that before I joined Saving Throw, I didn't do social media stuff. I didn't know what I was doing with that, and I had a little bit of a background in it, and I found that I'm pretty decent at it, and I've had the opportunity to do that. So what I think, I've actually learned a lot about my own skill set through this and things that have nothing to do with me as a performer. So very much along the lines of what everybody has said, I think it's about sort of researching yourself and also looking at your interests, because I've often been told, I can look around and go, man, I don't know what kind of job I should do. There's nothing out there for me. And instead kind of thinking of, well, what do I like to do? And then approaching it that way. It's sort of a roundabout way. Your questions kind of come in the other direction, so I hope that makes sense. But it's sort of approaching the skill set you have from what your interest is and reframing it, much like they said, if that makes sense.
this is going to sound the same, but tailoring your resume. You should not have one resume, and it should be tailored to who you're going to talk to and what you're trying to do at that company, and really taking your skill set and pointing out the things that are going to apply to that position.
Start your own business. Yeah, we're out of time. There's a lot more to that, but I think that was a different panel anyway.
On that note, I just want one last round of applause from all of our amazing panelists. Thank you so much. Thank all of you for coming. I really appreciate it. Make sure you check out our fantastic panelists on social media and follow them. And if you have any more questions, make sure you hit up Saving Throw, hit up Twist Gaming, hit up any of the panelists with any other questions you might have had after you leave the panel. And I have coupons. Awesome. Thank you all. Thank you. Bye.